Do you know that feeling when you come back from Japan and you're having kind of a reverse culture shock, or you think, yeah, I kind of want to go back, it was so good and so nice? Um, Basically, in this video, I will talk about which things I miss the most since I came back from Japan. So, yeah, I don't know, grab a cold drink, grab some popcorn, and let's talk about which things you can miss when you come back from Japan, back to your home country after a long time. Let's get started. Hey, I'm Victor. On my social media channels, I'm called Sekai Insight. And basically, in this video, I want to give you an insight to which things you can miss when you come back from Japan. Because basically, I went to Japan for 1 year as an exchange student. Now, since I came back to Germany, it's around about 2 months, I think. And yeah, of course, there are the usual things you can miss out when you come back from Japan, like the food culture, or maybe the like gacha culture and all the anime stuff you can buy. And also, it's so cheap to buy it, right? But in this video, I kind of want to talk about some things that you can miss about Japan, and I really miss about Japan, that are maybe not mentioned that commonly. Or maybe I will put them in a kind of different context for you, so it's also kind of interesting for you. So the first point I miss about Japan is, so basically, Japan is a country for busy people. And I'm basically a person that is always busy. Like, even now I'm taking this video on a Saturday, I don't even remember when is the last day I took some time off for myself. But I don't know, I like to be busy, I like to do something. So that's why I'm here making this video, and that's why I'm always learning Japanese or doing something for my university. But anyway, like I said, Japan is a country for busy people, but like, what do I mean by this? So basically, you have to imagine that Japan is a pretty busy country. You already know about like the overwork problem in Japan. And basically, people really put much time into their work. And compared to other countries, for example, when I talk to some Japanese friends, you're just allowed to take about 12 days off in a year. Like, I don't know, for example, in Germany, it's 30 days. And besides, you are allowed to take 12 days off a year. You cannot take off 10 days in a row usually. You can just take off like 1 or 2 or 3 days off. And of course, some people want to be busy, but also there's another, um, let's say, the system also makes you kind of busy. And besides the kind of working system, I kind of had this thing in Japan when I talk to many people. There's a sentence you really hear often when you kind of talk to some people or you talk about what you want to do and so on. They will always tell you something like, ah, ganbatte kudasai ne. And this basically, if you translate it to English, it means something like, yeah, give your best, try your best, do your best, input your energy and time and so on. And that is something that is really seen like as a virtue in Japanese culture. Usually it's not that important how efficient you are, it's important how much you input yourself into something. So if you're, for example, working for a company and you really come to work earlier, you do overtime much, um, even though it's your free time, you have some phone calls that you also do, and so on. That is, of course, some overwork problem, but the overwork problem itself is kind of rooted in the fact that you have this kind of culture to always give your best, always do your best. And that is the like culture background. But of course, if you have people that are really busy and often overwork and often sacrifice their free time to um, do that much, they need something to compensate for this, right? So if you're really, really busy person, you still need to kind of relax. You're not a robot, right? Um, and that is why you have many things in Japan to kind of relax. And that's what I kind of felt in um, comparison to Germany. So, for example, you can go eat 24/7. You can eat 24/7. So, usually, if you come back from work even at 11 p.m. or 0, you just eat something somewhere. There's always something open. At Germany, maybe there's one or maybe two restaurants that are open, but compared to Tokyo or the Tokyo region where I was, um, you cannot compare it. And for example, you also have in general many things you can do. Like If you feel exhausted, you can go to an onsen for like just €6 a whole day. Or maybe you want to have a nice day with your family or your girlfriend and stuff, then you can go to Team Labs and see something. Or you can go to a like really nice art museum, or maybe you have a planetarium, and you know what I mean. There are like so many things to do. Of course, like Tokyo, for example, is the biggest city in the world, but I recognize, compared to Germany, for example, that when you really want to relax in case of going out and spending some money, it's not that expensive. Even if you compare it to the income that Japanese people have, um, it's not that expensive. Like, for example, a lunch menu, you can already get lunch for like €3. And in Germany, for example, when you go out to eat dinner or lunch, it is really, really expensive here. So you cannot just do it every day. In Japan, for example, I saw many people that also, if they take some time off their work, if they have their lunch break, they just go outside to eat somewhere. And that's something I never really saw in Germany because you don't have the money to do it. But that's also the kind of contrast. And that's why I want to compare those two cultures, because I'm from Germany. But um, basically, in Germany, you have more time you can take off. You usually have 30 days a year you can take off. Usually, when you work more, for example, instead of working 40 hours a week, you work, let's say, 48 hours a week. Then the 8 hours you can choose to either get money for those 8 hours, or you choose to take a day off. In Japan, for example, you cannot take a day off. You're not allowed to convert those hours into taking a day off. And yeah, that's why I don't know. I don't think in Germany there are that many things you can do in your free time. Um, and they're not that cheap as compared to Japan. And I think one reason for this is that in Germany you have more free time, you don't need to work that much, you don't have this kind of gambare culture. But for me personally, um, I liked it in Japan. And of course, if you're an exchange student, you don't have anything to do, right? So that's kind of where it comes to, you can benefit of the kind of service culture in Japan, but on the other hand, you don't need to do as much as other people. But even if I would have the same workflow as in Germany, like I told you before, then still Japan is really nice in this kind of thing. And also next to this kind of culture where you can relax much with not that much money, even compared to Japanese income, there's also another thing. And that is kind of, I mean, you already know it, but it comes into this topic too. It's about like trains and buses and so on. They always come on time, right? And that is really a thing, if you need to be at work at some time, you can just say, okay, I take this bus or this train and it will most likely come at this time. In Germany, for example, you just look at the timetable, and usually I need to take one or two buses earlier. And if they come every half hour, I need to go earlier 1 hour, because there can be a possibility that the bus will not come, or the bus will come way too late. And in this case, that is something really good if you're a busy person. If you have a meeting, or if you have many things you need to do in a day, if you can really rely on the Japanese like system and everything, it's really comfortable. And I think in comparison to Germany, there are more things you can do in a day than in Germany, because there are not that many things that like drain your time. Also, some other examples that I had, for example, that also go in this kind of thing. There's an unwritten rule in Japan that if you get an email, that you kind of need to answer it within 24 hours. And that is a really good thing, because imagine you have a problem and you write to them and they write you within 24 hours. Then you can really fix this problem really fast. And for example, when I went to Japan, I was creating a bank account, and I think there was some minor mistake in my documents. So what they did was, they called me really like, I don't know, after I submitted the documents, they called me about like half or 1 hour later, and they said, yeah, there's like a small problem with your document, blah, blah, blah. And it was not even their working time anymore. But they called me and said, yeah, there's a problem with your document, you wrote this, but do we have the allowance to change it in this way so it fits the system and blah, blah. I was like, yeah, all right, you can do it like this. And then that was finished. Like, for example, in Germany, if I have a problem with some institution, usually, of course, it's not always like this, but usually you wait like 1 week for getting an answer with your mail, or even the worst case, you don't even get an answer. Or what is even worse, if it's some institutional thing, they just work like, I don't know, 4 times a week from 8 a.m. to 12, uh, I don't know, is it a.m.? Like from 8 a.m. they work about 4 hours. And that's also something. Imagine you're not a student, but you have a real job. You don't have any possibility to get an appointment to go there unless you take a day off. And that is something that I realized, that really there's so many things in Japan, if you look at the like institutional systems, for example, that they kind of give you fast answers, in my impression. Or if you look at the food culture, that you can always eat for a pretty small price, and so on. Um, you can see at many corners in Japan there are things that just make your life easier and more comfortable. And that is one thing I think I miss maybe the most about Japan. But there's some two other interesting points I want to share with you now. Basically, what I just said before, I just had the example with my bank account, right? That even though the person was not at their working time, they took their own time to make a phone call and talk to me and fix the problem that was my problem, right? And that is something that goes into another thing in Japanese society, and that's, as you already know, Japanese is a group-oriented society. Don't get me wrong. I think in Germany, America, and so on, there are also people that will take their free time to fix some problems. For example, maybe if you're in a higher position in a company, then of course you will have some phone calls when you're on your weekend or when you're in vacation, because people need your assistance. But the difference is, and that is always the difference when I compare Japan and Germany, that the amount of how many times this kind of thing happens is different. And in this case, really in Japan, it's really common that people sacrifice their own time, their own free time, to fix the problem of other people. And you can really, really sense it in Japan, that it's not just with when you're working that you're sacrificing your own time for other people. It's also in general in nearly everyday situations too. So, for example, when you go to a train and you want to have a seat, then sometimes maybe a person will look at you and say, ah, you can go first instead of me. Or maybe when you're in the train and some person, I don't know, wants to listen to music, they will always have headphones and listen to music with their headphones instead of just listening on their phone. For example, if they have a phone call, they will not talk on their phone inside the train or the bus. They will wait until they get off to not bother the other people. And of course, in Japan, I also met people, not always, I also met people that don't bother about these rules. For example, I don't know, if you go party to some place in Shibuya or something, then sometimes there are people inside the train that are really, really loud, for example. Like you have it too, but it's just the amount of situations that is different, I would say. It's not like Japanese are like this and German are like this. Like, of course, everyone is human. You cannot predict how a person will act just according to their culture. Their culture is just a starting point, but at the end, how they behave and what they do is still individually, right? That's what I also want you to keep in mind. Um, but yeah, that's what I kind of recognized, that people think more about other people, and the things I'm talking right now about are really like everyday situations, you know? So um, I don't talk about closer friendships or everything, because I think this is a whole different topic. But if you don't know a person, I think that people care more about you and the environment and so on. And of course, maybe you will say, yeah, but if you go to Japan, there are so many rules, you have to behave, you always have to sacrifice your own needs um, to care for other people. But I think to a certain degree it is kind of a good thing, because if you care for other people, if you don't eat your lunch inside the train, if you don't listen loud to music inside the train, um, if you, for example, look out more for other people to like give them the seat instead of taking it on your own and so on, then also other people will usually do it for you. So of course you sacrifice yourself kind of to um, do something for other people, but it also comes back vice versa, right? And that is a good thing, because I don't know, in Germany sometimes I feel like you need to really fight to get something, you know. Um, if you're maybe at the bus, for example, and there are open seats, then everyone will just rush inside, you know. They will not stand in front of the bus in some line or something. They will just be like, yeah, who first goes there gets the seat. Um, there's also a saying in German, for example, that is called uh, a person that comes first is the person that paints first. So if you kind of translate the meaning, it means something like if you're there and if you're the first, then you can take it. So yeah, that is something that I recognize at Japan. And I don't know, maybe one small addition. Um, Another thing that I recognize that is kind of not there in Japan, because I don't know, it doesn't fit in this concept of group-oriented society, but usually when I was at Germany, if there's an elderly person, usually people will always offer a pregnant woman, for example, or an elderly person, or a person they see that has some kind of, I don't know, you see they cannot stand there for that long time, you will offer them the seat. For example, in this case, I saw that in Germany, in this case, people are more nicer than in Japan. So you cannot put it to like every topic, but like I said, in general, um, when I was at Japan, that people usually watched out more for the environment than they did in Germany, and I think that's a good thing. And that also comes into the first point for busy people. If you're a really busy person, if you always have to do something, you're kind of exhausted. And if people around you are a bit more silent or more considerate about you, you can kind of relax a bit more and so on. And yeah, that was the second point. So let's get into the third point that I'm missing the most in Japan. That is maybe a thing that many people really like about Japan, I think. And if I think about everything in Japan, this was actually the most beautiful thing for me. So basically, I put everything inside one bucket, kind of like nature, tradition, and so on. But basically, let's start with nature. When you go to Japan, there's so many things you can see. Like, you have mountains where you can climb and have a really nice view in Japan. You have a sea where you can swim, for example. And there's so many things you can see. Also, like every month, there's just some kind of different, I don't know, flower that is growing. For example, at the place that I was living, like it was called Takasu, I don't know, they really designed this place really pretty well, because even in wintertime there was some bush where some flowers were coming out. I don't know, I never saw this in my life. So I was like, what is this? And then the next month I was checking and there's just a new flower. And the next month I was checking and there's something else. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm from Germany, I don't know all these kind of flowers or trees and so on. But for me, this was really beautiful, you know, to see some kind of different nature. I don't know, for me, this is something that was really beautiful in my when I think about the time when I was in Japan. And also when we talk about nature, usually when you go into nature, you have some kind of shrine or temple, usually around places with much nature. And that was something I also really liked in Japan, because you have so many temples you can go, you have so many shrines you can go there, and they're really, really beautiful places. And I don't know, for example, when we compare it to Germany or the Western countries, you have a church, but um, in Germany, I think if it's a really, really big church, for example, okay, many people will go there, but usually I think people, if they don't really believe in God, they will not really go to church. But in Japan, for example, even if you say, I don't believe in Shinto, for example, you will still kind of go there and look around there. And I don't know, there was a nice thing in general, you know, to see these kind of nice shrines and um, the nature, like kind of the tradition in Japan. Um, yeah, and you can see that Japanese people are really proud of this, and I think it's something you can really be proud of course, because I don't know, it's hard to describe it with words. I think I will put some pictures or some videos so you can kind of understand it maybe. But yeah, that was something I really liked about Japan, and yeah.
本日は当山 善光寺にご参拝いただき、誠にありがとうございます。
And also maybe just a fun fact about like shrines and everything. Basically, why shrines are always kind of in a place with nature, usually much before, um, like the religious places where you can see the shrines today, usually those were just nature places. So there were no buildings, there was just a place of nature. And usually this was kind of like the holy place where you can wander around and kind of feel the atmosphere. And then there was, I don't remember it exactly, but there was some certain family that inputted a kind of rule or a common tradition to build shrines out of wood. And that's when they really started to, instead of just have the place with nature, they integrated shrine building into this place too. Where usually some kami, some god is living inside and stuff. And yeah, like I said, there's so many shrines you can see, so many temples you can see. It's really astonishing how they built all of this, you know. So there was something, like I said already, but that I really miss. And when you see these kind of cultural things in Japan, I can see that Japanese people are really, usually of course, but that in Japan tradition is something really valuable, you know. So um, I don't know if you think about for how long you have this kind of shrine history and everything. It's really interesting. Um, if you really read a bit about these topics and read a bit about where this comes from, maybe I can make a separate video about this one day too, but you can really see they have a strong tradition that is really long growing. For example, in Germany, I don't know how you call them in English, but we had like the origins of the kind of Germans. There were some kind of tribes before, but since like the Christ Church came, all of these traditions kind of got um, they kind of got away. So nowadays no one knows about these old like German traditions. And also I think Germany as a country is kind of historically a bit complicated too, if I can say it like this. So maybe as a German you don't have the feeling of that long history of Germany where you really feel proud about. Um, or maybe it was just for me like this because I went to Japan. But yeah, this was something like I said, in contrast to Germany, you see they have really many traditions that are kind of shared across the whole country and that people engage in. Just one thing about this is kind of the shrines. And usually you also go to shrines to certain occasions. Um, when you have an exam, when you got some work, when you want to find a partner in your life, you go there and you pray and you buy something to get some luck. So yeah, just seeing these kind of cultures and traditions was something really nice. Um, yeah, this was kind of a really spontaneous video. I don't know if it was just like over the top, and I hope it was kind of clear to understand. Um, yeah, these are three things I miss about Japan, and you can write down in the comments what you miss about Japan, what you found really beautiful there. So, yeah, as always, thank you for listening. Have a great day. また今度よろしくね。